Have you ever watched a company that's at the absolute top of its game, just a giant in its industry, suddenly stumble? It's a huge and, let's be honest, kind of scary question in business. How does a winning formula all of a sudden become a recipe for failure? Well, to figure that out, we've got to look at a company that seemed to have it all and then just lost its way. So to really get to the bottom of this, we're going to dive into a classic cautionary tale. It's the story of a corporate titan that got so good at what it did, so perfectly optimized, that it completely missed the world changing right under its feet. You know, this one quote, it just nails the whole problem. When your way of doing things becomes so rigid, it's like it's set in concrete. You just can't move. And in business, if you can't move, you are in some serious trouble. And for 2 whole decades, Dell's model was absolutely brilliant. They sold straight to the customer, their supply chain was unbelievably efficient, and they could get you a computer faster and cheaper than pretty much anyone. They were a machine, just ruthless in their focus on execution. But this is where the cracks started to appear. See, Dell's winning formula, selling direct, executing flawlessly, and making these conservative desktop PCs, was built for a world that was kind of disappearing. The market was shifting. People started shopping in retail stores, they began to care about design and innovation, and the demand for notebooks was just exploding. Now here's the critical thing to understand. This wasn't a surprise. Dell knew the market was changing. The problem wasn't a lack of information, it was a total failure of the organization to act on that information. The whole system was just locked in, stuck in its old way of doing things. And that brings us to the real villain of our story: organizational inertia. It's what happens when the very things that made you a champion become the chains that hold you back. Your strategy might be yelling, "turn left," but the whole organization just keeps marching straight ahead. And that creates this massive, dangerous fracture between your plan and what you actually do. So, okay, if inertia is the disease, then what's the cure? Well, it all comes down to this really powerful idea called strategic integrity. Strategic integrity is really all about alignment. It's about closing that gap between the big strategy conversations happening at the top and the real work happening on the ground. It means your great ideas don't just sound good in a PowerPoint deck. They can actually be built perfectly by the teams you have. And look, this isn't just some fuzzy concept. It's a real, practical framework. It's built on 3 pillars. First, you have participatory planning. Then, you need an aligned organization that's actually designed for that plan. And finally, you power it all with system-focused decision-making to keep it all humming. These are the building blocks you use to fight off that inertia. All right, so let's get into the how. How do you actually build an organization that has this kind of integrity? We're going to break down each of those 3 pillars one by one. Let's start with planning, and I absolutely love this quote because it totally reframes what a plan is even for. A good plan isn't a set of rigid, unbreakable rules. It's a map. It gives you the context you need to make smart changes, to be flexible, instead of just randomly reacting to things. So this kind of planning, it's a team sport. It's not some document that gets handed down from the heavens. It's a constant conversation, top down, bottom up, even middle out, that helps everyone build a shared map of reality. The goal isn't just to have a plan, it's to find all the hidden risks before you even start building anything. And that leads us right into the second pillar, the organization itself. An aligned organization is, first, efficient. It cuts through all the red tape. It's also accountable, with really clear ownership that builds trust. And finally, it's transparent, using a flatter structure to shut down office politics and just encourage people to be honest. At the very core of this alignment is a simple but really powerful idea, the power of 3. It's this super tight partnership that makes everything else work. It's the constant collaboration between program management, who figures out what to build, development, who actually builds it, and testing, who makes sure it works. When that trio is perfectly in sync, the whole system just clicks. So the final piece of the puzzle is how you make decisions. An aligned organization trusts its teams, but with one critical ground rule. You always make decisions that are best for the whole system, not just your little corner of it. It's about asking, is this good for the entire product? Not just, is this good for my team? And that takes clear accountability and, frankly, the courage to admit what you don't know. Okay, so we have the theory, right? The planning, the organization, the decision-making. But does any of this stuff actually hold up in a high-stakes, real-world scenario? I mean, it's a fair question, isn't it? It all sounds great on a slide, but what happens when the pressure is really on, when millions of dollars are on the line?
Well, the answer is a definite yes. This exact framework was the engine behind one of the biggest product turnarounds in modern tech history, Windows 7.
Now, pretty much everyone remembers the, let's call them challenges around Windows Vista. The pressure for the next version was absolutely immense, so the team went back to square one. They completely rebuilt their process around these pillars of strategic integrity. They created a new participatory plan, they realigned the whole organization, and they empowered their teams to make good decisions. And the result really does speak for itself. Windows 7 was a huge success. It was praised for being stable, packed with smart innovations, and most importantly, it felt like a product that was actually listening to what customers wanted. That's what an organization with integrity produces.
So, at the end of the day, the real question isn't about Dell or Microsoft. It's about you. Take a hard look at your own organization. Can you feel those little tremors? Where are the cracks forming between the strategy everyone talks about and the work that actually gets done? Because finding those fractures isn't just a good idea, it's the only way to make sure your own success doesn't end up cast in concrete.